What happens when you close your eyes? Have you ever thought about this? When you close your eyes, where do you go? You go to this black space, but there's nothing there. And yet, from that nothing, everything emerges. All the things that you see in the world manifest around you that are not natural, the things that are created by human hands, have all emerged from this black nothingness space in your mind that happens when you close your eyes. Is that not kind of mental? They're not a paradox. They're not a paradox of existence, that from the nothingness comes everything. From the nothingness of your mind comes everything of creation. It sounds quite similar. Does it not? Doth it not? To what all these mad religious fucking books are saying about the big man. When, the Buddhists, the Zen, they're all talking about emptiness, this emptiness that exists, this boundless, unknowable presence that is nothingness, because as soon as something becomes a thing, as soon as it takes on form, it ceases to be the infinite. So there's this infinite nothingness, and from that infinite nothingness happened creation. This is what they say. Happened form, happened the world, happened nature, happened the reality that we see around us, happened you, happened me. And it's interesting to me that also, when I close my eyes, I see nothingness. There's nothing there. Even when I try and imagine something, like I'm going to try and imagine the beach in Scotland, it's like I can see the beach vaguely, but it's very wispy, it's very ethereal. And behind that, there remains that nothingness. And some people maybe have a stronger visualization ability than me, and they can just see a movie in their mind. But I don't think that's how it works. It's quite dreamlike. And if I try to think about it too hard, it's gone. It's just back to nothingness. And everything that in my life has happened, everything that's happened in my life, started out from this nothingness. An image emerged of who I wanted to be. An image emerged when I was 14 and I saw a talk about a man who'd cycled around the world. And this image was me travelling around the world. And hey presto, when I was 19, I decided to go travelling around the world. This is the way it's worked for my entire life. When I was 25, an image emerged. Actually, when I was about 22, an image emerged of me working on a laptop and travelling around, doing whatever I wanted, living in any country, living in Colombia, and then a few years later, there I was, on a laptop, living in every country. Out of that nothingness, something emerged, and then it was, quote-unquote, manifested into the external world. And for me, this is one of the ways that I've come to understand, the truth, which in itself seems a bit pretentious, the phrase. But that's what it is. That's what this is all about. This is all about trying to discover the absolute truth to existence, the absolute truth to why we're here on planet Earth. What's the mathematical fucking equation for why we are human beings here on planet Earth, floating about, watching the football and going to the pub? And there's nothing wrong with watching the football and going to the pub. But there's got to be something more going on. And there is, it turns out. There is. And one of the ways that I understand this idea of the truth is when I look at it from the perspective of what happens in my mind. I close my eyes, in my mind there's nothing. An image emerges. And from that image, things get enacted in my life. When I write, I'm not thinking, but stuff pops into my head and I write it. When I'm speaking right now, I'm not thinking about what I'm speaking. I'm not thinking about what I spoke about before. I'm not thinking about what I'm going to speak about. I'm just here absolutely in the present moment, trusting that words are going to come out my mouth. And they keep coming out my mouth, and I'm not having to think about it. I'm not having to think about it. Is that not crazy? So where do they come from? Because I feel like I'm not consciously doing it. So if these words, which I'm not consciously thinking about, which I'm not creating, come down from somewhere, from that nothingness of the mind or the muse or whatever you want to call it, and then they come effortlessly out of the mouth, and become speech, and become quote-unquote art. Not quite yet, I wouldn't say this is art. Become a video on YouTube that then maybe touches the lives of others. How does that happen? Where do these ideas come from? Where does that stuff pop from? Where do the ideas pop from? You know, when you're out on a night out and you're saying, you know, you're making jokes, making people laugh, you didn't think of that joke in advance. You weren't sitting before the night out being like, okay, if we're in this situation and the bartender says this, I'll make this joke. You don't do that. It just pops into your head out of nowhere in the moment based on the circumstances. But from where doth it pop? That's the big question. That's the big question for me. Where does this stuff all come from? In my mind, where does that come from? And then all this shit. You know, this chair came from someone else's mind. But in their mind, they don't know where it came from, you know. The world around us, the trees, you know, the natural world, that all came from somewhere. Where? It's the big question. So, anyways, these are the kind of things I like to think about. And, I don't know, I hope that was maybe passingly entertaining for yourself as well. Thanks very much. Cheers.